right, somebody asked for Google on the Godel platform. So I have to listen to the Godel people first. Sorry, guys. Let us look at the GOOG. I update GOOG fairly regularly, so. Oh, I did not update Q2. Alphabet investor regulations. 163. Why are so many CEOs Indian? They work hard, man. They're really smart. They work hard. American dream. Indian American dream. Okay, so let's do balance sheet for Google. Look at the Capex for Google. They've gone from having 100 bill in equipment to 150. That's including depreciation. You know, they have this recent ruling where they potentially will no longer be able to pay Apple for placement, product placement. I mean, anti-regulation, very antitrust, needless to say. And I don't think we should break up monopolies just because they're monopolies. Why punish people for doing their job well? That to me is crazy. Yeah, I agree that these bigger companies have risk-averse CEOs. That's why people like Satya and Mark Zuckerberg are very unusual. You know, they're really remarkable risk takers. Okay, so Google last quarter grew 14%. Yeah, so Google's old CEO, Eric Schmidt, recently said that the reason the company hasn't been doing well is because of the remote work and pay time off, which I completely agree with. I think remote work is a non-starter. And he was basically saying the company no longer has that dog in them. And they removed the video from the internet because that's the kind Google does. But he said it, he can't take it back. I think there's a lot of truth to what he said. And, you know, generally, the bigger the company, the lazier it gets, you know. That's pretty typical. It's hard to have that entrepreneurial drive. Let's look at cash flow. You know, they call me Fidel Cash Flow. Sometimes they call me that. You may call me that as well. Chat, is that real? I have to be like Aiden Ross. The chat is going crazy right now. It's hard to make financial analysis that fun. Are these numbers for real right now? Can you believe this? 16% growth? Whoa! That's crazy, bros. Cramer, you know, is the one guy, give him credit, you know, that could kind of make it interesting, but you know, his whole shtick was, you know, a little bit, I don't know, not contrived, but like maybe even ill-informed. You could tell he doesn't know every stock, which is a little foolish to even suggest you could know every stock. Because like, I don't know, in my field, like I know a lot of stocks in biopharma, but it's hard to stay that current on them unless you're like looking at them all day. And I know he works really hard and everything, but I don't know. Entertainment is a distant goal for me. I'd much rather you be rich than entertained, or learn how to become rich. But I'm happy to share what I know. Notice Google hasn't made a substantial acquisition in a long time. I mean, they considered, right, apparently buying HubSpot, which would have been interesting. They're spending their capital, as you can see here, on stock buybacks. They put 100 billion into stock buybacks these last 7 quarters. 100 B. And they've paid some dividends. Not much in the dividends, it looks like. Actually, they stopped paying dividends? I don't get it. Chat, I don't get it. So trailing, no, that's single quarter free cash flow? Wow, okay. So TTM FCF, trailing 12 months free cash flow. It's a pretty good metric, I think. It's been pretty steady if you look at that chat. Take a look, line 94. You see that? It's been pretty steady. You know, the company's been trying to invest in Capex. You can see that, like, from 2022 to 2024, you know, it's sort of been this steady 60 to 70 billion. This number looks like suspiciously the same. Almost looks like, what are the odds that all 3 quarters would be 69,495 together? That's like impossible. What a coincidence. These are like all different numbers. How crazy is that, chat? How crazy is that? Is there any explanation for that? Like, how unlikely? Let's look at the decimals. Well, they don't have decimals, so they're exactly the three same numbers. That's pretty crazy. You never see that. All right, let's go start looking at the actual situation. Disaggregated revenue, Google search, 48,509. And so search is growing. You know, ChatGPT was introduced, what would you say, some point in this period? I have like the other traffic data, and I can tell you from that traffic data, as well as this revenue data, like, ain't changed for Google. Also growing, rest in peace to Susan. You know, if you guys didn't know, Susan, one of the great businesswomen in history. But rest in peace, Susan, tech legend, one of the, I want to say, first employees at Google. There she is, number 16. I keep track of all the Google employees. Susan Wojcicki, Marissa, these guys I both know. This guy just got reacquired. Jeff and Narayanan. So yeah, one of the first employees over at Google. Made a very special company. All right, so GCP, Google Cloud, still growing. Other bets and hedging. Okay. TAC is traffic acquisition cost, pretty important stuff to look at. Also want to see the geography. And I want to listen to the conference call. Advertising still most of Google's business. What are the real big threats to search? GPT, which Google I think is completely neutered. They have their own sort of AI search. They're very good at AI. You know, they invented half of AI. So I think they're going to be fine. They're not that great at product anymore, but at the end of the day, it seems to me very unlikely that there's going to be, you know, some interloper that comes out of the woodwork and beats Google. Here's TAC. So I guess the idea is like, is this where Apple payments come out of? It should, right? Traffic acquisition costs paid to distribution partners. They pay Mozilla, they pay Apple. That's their main cost of goods, right? Otherwise they would have no cost of goods. I like Intel. I don't know if it's a buy right now, but I do like Intel. IBRX looked really interesting to me, actually. I can't say I really like it or anything, but I don't know Zomedica. I haven't looked at that in a long time. So buying character is a really interesting move for Google. I don't know Starbucks at all. I think the character acquisition's really fascinating. They're paying like $2 billion. It'll come out in the cash flow statement, I think, next quarter, if they close the deal. Character AI. So they're changing their CFO too. I'm not sure on Iovance. I only looked at it for a few minutes. So in terms of the TTM FCF, that's what I want to talk about real briefly. So the enterprise value chat is roughly 2 trillion. Gupta's doing good. So 70, that's around a 27, 28 times earnings. But that's with a lot of Capex that may roll over and not be spent again. So that's kind of one way to think about that. Somebody asked if everything's priced in the stock market. Well, there's a lot of benefits to studying companies independent of whether or not it's priced in or not. Obviously, if you're solely an investor, that's largely all you really care about. But let's say you're an investor in just AI or search or software in general, you probably have to pay attention to Google, if that makes sense. You know, so that's sort of the first thing there. It's a good barometer for all of tech. You're right that a big market cap stock like this is fairly well arbitraged. So my quick and dirty numbers tell me the stock's worth 161 and the stock's trading at 163. Obviously my forecasting ability isn't that specific and sensitive, but it kind of tells you that the market's assuming this kind of thing will happen. Now, I do think it looks sort of attractive because in my model, starting in 2030, the business goes into decline, which is probably not going to happen. My guess is there'll be some growth instead. And that gets you to 230, which is, you know, quite a bit more than 160. But you're not going to make a fortune with Google. That's a 40% return or so. You know, the discount rate, you know, it's something you can decide for all your other equities. I kind of feel like if the 10-year is trading at 4%, maybe 8% is still a little too conservative. Maybe 7 or 7.5 is more likely. And I think the risk for Google is kind of weighed to the upside. Like, I do think that they'll continue to grow. I don't think the risk is weighed to the downside where, you know, as much as I like Perplexity and OpenAI's product and Claude's product, Anthropic's product, you know, it still feels like Google's not going anywhere. You know, if Apple did search, that would be interesting. But Microsoft tried with Bing and couldn't get anywhere. Google responded very quickly in search. And their product right now is pretty good. So cloud for Google, I think could work out with TPUs. It's one of the few serious competitors to NVIDIA. They haven't done a great job of evangelizing TPUs, but given NVIDIA's success, like, it could be like another trillion for Google's market cap. It's like the risk seems to be weighed to the upside, but it's still a very big company that's not going to be moving like a swift small company, right? I also think they can, it's weird, like, they're not a very honest company in the sense that they'd rather you not use their AI stuff and they'd rather not give it to you. They only started to do that when they were pressured by OpenAI and other companies, Meta specifically. And so now we have some open source products from Google, but they'd rather kind of keep it in-house. And that's the sort of the character AI story and sort of the LLM story in general, right? Google had LLMs before anyone. I actually briefly hired one of the guys involved in that. I think it was called Lambda at the time. Now it's called Gemini, the first Google LLM that people thought was like alive. Again, it's a little hard to foresee too much, but this big Capex spend that they've had, like, you could argue, okay, like, look at this Capex chat. They kind of started this boom in 2022, and I guess they tapered a little bit. But, like, assuming this, I don't know, maybe it's like, it should be 80 or 90, I don't know. That's kind of what I'm thinking. In which case, it's like somewhat attractive. Like, it's fairly, I'd rather buy it, you know, if I could buy it at 130 or something, that'd be like the dream price. It's just hard for them to grow that fast. Like, you can see the last two years have been pretty tepid. It's sort of a recession. It would be kind of a problem stock in a recession. Like, they could have, in '08, I think they had still, did they grow in '08? I forget. That's actually a good thing to look at. I think they did grow in '08, but it was still a much smaller company then. I don't like Satya. I've said that many times. I think he's kind of a fool. So if he gets replaced at some point, I do think that would be bullish. They need an agile leader. You know, they're very risk averse, like very, very risk averse. So it seems like a decent holding for a portfolio, but it's not the kind of thing that I'd be jumping up and down about buying. You know, you could make the case if they make some really great investments, if they grow a lot faster for some reason, you can get a double, which is a lot for a big cap stock like that. Can you get to 4 trillion? Yeah, maybe. But it's going to require quite a good outcome for them. And I think they're delivering, right? So I think the main lever they can pull is TPUs. If they can make TPUs like NVIDIA as exciting as NVIDIA, I do think that, you know, this cloud business can be as valuable as NVIDIA by itself. That's something that people don't understand. YouTube could also be monetized more effectively, and I think they're doing that, but it's not going to move the needle that much. Same thing with Waymo. Like, Waymo's a really amazing company and interesting, but like, what's the most it could be worth? 100 bill? 200 bill? Like, does that really move the needle for 2 trillion? Not really. And don't forget, Grok is out there with AI, and that's a threat. Meta is out there with AI. You could see people doing Google searches on Meta, I guess, a little bit more. It's kind of this weird thing where because of the lock-in on these devices, there is some serious risk for Google there, but I think most people are going to search with Google regardless. Yeah, I think it's okay. It's like this sleepy giant. If the markets also offer something, you get a chance to buy it much cheaper. It's, you know, could be attractive, but let me reset some of these numbers to something more realistic. Use to 0. Okay, so 20% upside in this. Okay, let's see what else Godel wants me to look at.